Welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining me today. I'm glad to have you on here and looking forward to our chat.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me, Andre.
Definitely. And if you could give us a little background about yourself just to get going, that'd be great.
Yeah, Andre. So I'm a real estate investor at heart and by trade. I've been doing it for 23 years, and it's super exciting. It's a great way to secure your financial future, as people say. But that's not what it was about for me when I started. And certainly, real estate investing wasn't my first business. And a lot of people that have known me and have followed my stuff, they are a little surprised to hear that my first business was a little bit different. I was 20 years old and I was looking to be rich like most 20-year-olds. I wanted to have, the boats and the money and all of that. And so I did what you probably expect any 20-year-old to do is I started a boy band with some friends. And I'm talking boy band like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, singing and dancing. There's no instruments. People ask me what instrument you played. I said, no, I just danced. And it was really interesting because I learned a lot of lessons in that experience, and it didn't work out. I didn't end up being in a boy band. I ended up becoming a real estate investor and then running one of the country's largest real estate investor coaching company out there, Keyspire. But so we got together, a group of 5 of us, and we worked really hard, and we worked for free at first. And we practiced singing and dancing. And then it was something we've never done before. Then we practiced coordinated dancing and friends, like little sisters' backyard birthday parties. And then we did these street festivals. And then the people started noticing. We started getting these TV interviews and these newspaper interviews back when TV and newspaper were the only interview format. And then we started getting invited to these variety shows all across the country with thousands of people. And then we were approached by a record label. We signed at a record label, went down to Nashville, Tennessee. We chose the studio. We were going to do our first album. Some of these studios like Britney Spears had been in. So they are like top tier studios. We got back to near where we lived at the time in Toronto, Canada. And our manager at the airport said, all right, we'll see you guys later. We'll call you in a couple of weeks and we'll let you know when we're going to proceed. Just think about what studio out of the 3 of them. We said, okay, awesome. We were on top of the world. We were so excited. We knew we were going to make it. So 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, no call. 3rd week goes by, no call. 4th week, no call. We're starting to get a little nervous at this point. At the 5th week, we got the call and we were excited. We all huddled around the receiver of the phone and the manager said, guys, it's over. We're going bankrupt and it's done. We're dropping our talent. We're just not doing this anymore. And instantly overnight, I was completely deflated. I was crushed. It was the most loss I'd ever experienced in my life. I was 20 years old. So it was the most loss I'd ever experienced. And that experience there is what has driven me to do everything that I've done in the last 23 years. And here's what I learned from that experience. I learned that I would never put anyone else in control of my future. I needed to be the person in control of my future, and not only my income, but my entire lifestyle. It wasn't going to be a record company. It wasn't going to be the government. It wasn't going to be an employer or the economy or politics or the weather. Nothing was going to be in charge of my future but me. And I took that philosophy, that guiding principle of life, and I've made my decisions going forward in life with that in mind. And here we are 23, 20, almost 24 years later from when I first had that experience. And our purpose at Keyspire is to put people in control of their future. That's what we do at our real estate coaching company. So it's come full circle into every single thing that I do in my life. But the next thing I found was real estate, Andres, and that put me in control of my future. And I've never looked back.
Great. So can you walk us through that first, if you want, deal or just how you first got started in real estate?
Yeah, let me walk you through, because everything significant in life, in my experience and the experience of the tens of thousands of people we've coached, happens for 2 reasons. Either there's an incident in your life or there's a realization. Incident is external. You get a job loss, you get a sickness, you get a bonus at work, you win the lottery, you get married, you get unmarried, you have kids move out. There's something that happens externally, and that changes your perspective on what you should be doing in life, what your goals are, and how hard you should be working at certain things. The other thing that happens is a realization. That's internal. That's like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to retire with my current income. I'm not going to be able to retire by keeping my money in the stock market the way it is. And whatever that, I'm not going to live healthy and long if I eat like this and I never exercise or work out. These are realizations that you have. So I had a realization, and that's what led me to real estate. And what happened was a couple months after the boy band, uh, a friend of mine, Scott, and I, we were taking some checks to the bank. It was our job to take the checks to the bank for all of our housemates, the five guys in the boy band that lived in a house, and now we had nothing to do. We were still going to school, a few of us, but it was our job to take the checks to the bank. This was before the days of e-transfer and all the great things, conveniences that we have today. So Scott and I take the checks to the bank, and we hand over the checks to the teller. And she says, "Would you like a receipt?" We say, "Yeah, sure. Give us a receipt." I mean, we didn't know. We're 20 years old, but we'd always just ask for a receipt. And we're walking back from the bank to the house. It was about a 10-minute walk, and it was a beautiful spring day, nice and warm, taking our time. And Scott I looked at the sheet. The receipt, and I said, "Scott, what does this say?" It says, "Payment $2,000, mortgage $600. What? How is the mortgage only 600? We're paying 2,000 in rent." He said, "Let me look at that." He looked at it, and we ended up deducing that the mortgage was 600, and we were paying over and above the mortgage by about $1,400, which seems obvious today to us, Andres, and anyone that might be listening. But when you've never been exposed to real estate investing or how rent works and how property investment works, this was a mind-blowing experience for us. And so that incident created a realization for me and said, wait a minute, I want to be on the other side of this equation. I don't want to be the guy on the $2,000 side giving the 2,000. I want to be the guy getting the 2,000. And I realized at that point, and Scott and I actually looked to each other and we said, we're both in the boy band. We're like, this is it. This is the next thing. We are going to get into real estate. And that is how we first discovered real estate, getting into real estate through that realization.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's surprising to me how something so simple like that isn't taught in school. I don't understand why, or university, you're supposed to come out prepared to handle life. And uh, I didn't know what a mortgage was either, right?
Yeah.
Until it's a
Yeah.
realization like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. Well, Andre, it's not surprising to me because if you think about it, if everybody knew this and everybody were to invest in real estate and be entrepreneurial versus the other alternative that we're taught, which is you go to school, you get a good job, you go to college, you get a good job, you work for 40 years, you pay into your pension or your retirement savings plan or whatever it is, you invest in the stock market, and magically when you're 65, everything is going to work out. That's what we're taught. And so that works really well for a society en masse. That keeps everybody, working. It keeps products being produced. And so not everybody can be a real estate investor. So they don't want to teach that in school to everybody, I believe, for those reasons, especially if you go to a big bank. A big bank doesn't want to tell you to buy real estate. They make a couple percentage points on the mortgage. They want you to invest in their stock market and their funds with their financial advisors. So it is interesting that they don't teach this in school, but it's also, for me, not super surprising because they want people to move in the direction of the status quo. That keeps everything, rolling.
not to mention that the ratio of salaries to the median, like the median salary to the median household or house value used to be like 3 to 1, right? And now it's like 7 to 1 or something, somewhere around there roughly. So
Totally different. Yeah. Yeah. The
it's a
model
whole
is totally different.
what do you mean by the model is
So
totally different?
the model that we need to run today in order to be financially free is different than the model that people are running, which is the one I just described. You go to work, you get a
Mhm.
good job, you pay in your retirement savings account. That was a fantastic model post World War II. In 1950 on, that model worked really well because of things, the economic drivers like you just mentioned, like home prices were different compared to incomes. Credit was it was non-existent actually in the 50s and 60s. It only consumer credit only came out in the 80s. And so the people that are running that model today, and by model I mean the way that they plan their retirement, the way they plan their future, financial future, if they're running the model from the 50s, they're going to get the 50s sort of results. But today we need a brand new model that incorporates home prices to income. It incorporates technology. It incorporates a more transient or virtual world where travel is much different than it was in the 50s. And it definitely incorporates the new real estate prices, real estate mantra, and rental and housing and all of those things.
So my question is, how does that new system um, affect society now? Because you have to be much more entrepreneurial, and just the plain reality is that not everybody has that ability. I mean, the fact that, you go to college and then you get a job and then you wait till you're 60, like you're saying, like that has actionable steps that people know how to do. It's within their comfort zone. Um, and, you know, first thing that comes to mind is that we're all going to have to get more out of our comfort zone. And as a society, that's good. But practically speaking, it's doesn't seem quite viable.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that are happening. Number one is Gen X is starting to panic. Anyone who's say, I think it's about 43 to 58, and the elder millennials, which are like, 38 to 43, this group of people is starting to panic because they're just realizing, they're just starting to do the math that, wait a minute, if I continue to stock this type of money away and I'm exposed to this volatility of the stock market and I play that out for 20 years, I'm not going to be able to retire with much income when I'm 60. I'm going to be working into my 60s and 70s. So I think for the majority of the Gen X, anyone over in their 40s is starting to get a little bit scared, starting to panic. And this is actually the group of people, the group of members that we attract the most at Keyspire are people that are 40 plus. They have been running the old model because they don't know any different. They've just kind of heard about this thing called real estate. They don't really understand it. So they come to us at Keyspire to learn how they can make real estate part of their plan so that by the time they're not 65 or 60 or 55, by the time they're 50 in the next decade, they can make a difference. By the next decade, they can get to their lifestyle freedom day, which is what we have retermed retirement. We don't use retirement, Andres, at our company. Retirement is a bad word around here. Retirement means to be no longer of use. And we've assessed that that's not really what people want, to be no longer of use. People want to live their lifestyle like they want. So we call it Lifestyle Freedom Day. And people are realizing that the old model is not going to make that happen. Those are people in their 40s. Now I'll talk in a minute about people in their 20s because it's a very different situation. But I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, I'd say most of my audience is in the 20s. So
Yeah.
if you wanted to continue to talk about that, we could. But just anecdotally about what you were saying about retirement, I don't know if you ever noticed somebody that quote unquote retires, there's the sort of deterioration that you see in them in the 3 or 4 years after that.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting when you like lose motivation, when you lose just your purpose, your drive, right? You something happens in your brain that you start deteriorating quicker than you otherwise would. So
That's right. Your purpose is so important. And that's what I love about real estate. Not only it gives me control, but that gives me purpose because I can run my business like I want to run it, not like somebody else wants to run it. Andres, I had a 90-year-old man come to one of my events, one of my investor summits. He had just become a member and I was chatting with him and I was just on stage talking about long-term investing. I was building a 15-year plan and talking about how that's going to work and how we ladder investments and we step invest. A couple techniques that we do at Keyspire. And he's 90 years old. He's going to be 110 by the time the plan I'm giving him,
right.
the plan that I built. So we chatted after and he said, Michael, I love being part of this community. I said, what do you love being about this community? What's your long-term investing plan? He said, for the first time in decades, I feel a purpose to do something. I love getting up in the morning because I have this real estate investing that I'm going to be doing. It's not about the money. For me, the money is just going to go to my children and grandchildren and create that legacy, which you can really create with real estate. But he says, for the first time in decades, I've had purpose, and thank you for that. And so that's a great anecdote or example about what you just said, that having that purpose makes you 10 times younger, as you get older, makes you never retire in your life, because that's not what we want. We want to have purpose and live purposeful lives.
Definitely. Why don't we talk a little bit about what you were saying about 20-year-olds? I think I'd be interested in knowing that personally. I'm sure a lot of the listeners would be too.
Yeah, let's talk about Gen Z for a minute. So Gen Z is like 11 to 25. So, the elder Gen Zs are say 20 to 25. I was 20 years old when I started. And I can tell you there's a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. But the similarities, I think, well, they're both important. Let's talk about the similarities between when I started as at that age and a 20-year-old today. We have some things in common. Number one, we have no money. That's a commonality. Number two, we don't make any money. We don't have any income. If we have any income, it's not significant. Number three, we have no credibility. Number four, we have no contacts. Number five, we have no experience. And I could keep going on and on about the things that we don't have. And that hasn't changed. That didn't change from 100 years ago, from 20 years ago, and certainly it's that group of people today. And that is where you're at if you're just starting out in life and in real estate. So what we focus on at KeySpire is to not focus on the things you don't have. It's like, let's look at the things that you do have. So when you're in this group called 20 to 25, 20 to 30 even, when you're in this younger group and you're just starting out and those are all your disabilities in real estate, well, just your disabilities, you have all these amazing abilities that other people don't have. What might those abilities be? Well, you have time horizon. You have more of a time horizon than somebody who's 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. That means you can take on different projects and you can take on more risk without being more risky. It's a funny little thing about risk. Risk has a lot to do with time horizon, a lot more time horizon than it does have to do with an actual investment. So you can take on more risk without being more risky because you have time horizon. The other thing is you have more time in your day. And somebody might be watching this or listening that's 20 years old and saying, Michael, I got no time in my day. What do you mean? I'll say, well, try being 40 years old with 2 or 3 kids and a job or two, and tell me that you have more time then than you do now. So you have the most time in your day than you'll ever have in your life. So even though you have all these other disabilities, you have some amazing abilities that you bring to the table. So when you're a Gen Z and you're investing, when you're in your early 20s and investing, you got to focus on these resources you bring to the table. And what we teach our investors, our members, is to find people with those other resources. You don't have any money, somebody's got that resource. Find the person with that resource. You don't have any income, someone's got that resource. You find the person with that resource. And you create a partnership with one or more people. They bring the resources you don't have, and you bring the resources that they don't have. Time horizon and time, maybe some skills. Definitely you have technology skills that the average 40 or 50-year-old doesn't have. This is the other side of the coin, is this group is extremely tech savvy compared to older generations. So what you bring to the table is the use of technology, and that's extremely important when it comes to your real estate investing business. If as a early 20-year-old, you can demonstrate to somebody in their 40s that has money that you can operate the technology, operate the software, maybe use ChatGPT to write your tenant postings or to write your deals or things like that, all of a sudden you become valuable, and I'd say more valuable than money. And so that's the way I would look at it. If you're in your 40s, you've got young kids and you're busy working, you've got resources like money and income, but you don't have resources like time or time horizon. You need to borrow those resources from somebody that's younger, that doesn't have the money or income, but they have time and time horizon. And when you come together, you end up building a partnership and doing a deal that neither of you could do on your own.
And when you say you don't have money, what would you say? Because I don't know, if you're, I'm 29. So let's say you're 22 or 24-ish, you've saved for a couple of years after college and you set aside, I don't know what a reasonable number would be, but like, let's say $10,000. Is that no money? Like, and 10,000, I mean, as just savings, say, would you say that is something that you could use to invest in real estate, or is that not enough? And I mean, obviously you can go and look for investors and stuff, but if let's say you specifically wanted to do it, just by yourself.
Yeah. No money. I mean, I say no money kind of in a fun way. Like, you got no money, but 10,000 is like, it's no money really in the grand scheme of buying a $500,000 property.
Right.
So you want to buy a $500,000 property, say you need 20% down, that's $100,000. And then you need some money to renovate the property to improve it. Because one of our main strategies is called flip to yourself, where we buy a property, we renovate it to improve it and increase the value. And then we refinance it for ourselves. Instead of flipping it to somebody else, we actually flip it to ourselves by refinancing it. That's going to take maybe another $30 or $40,000. So you might need 100 to 130,000 in the deal, and you have 10,000. You have you've got no money relative to the deal. What we're finding with our younger investors is they are actually taking that $10,000 and putting it into marketing. They're putting it into marketing and branding, building the systems of the business, getting educated, learning how to do this. So when they bring what they bring to the table, their $10,000 is nothing compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars out there that people have ready to invest. But 10,000 is nothing. So they get educated. They learn how to do it. They build a network. They get the t-shirts printed. They get their nice packages. So when they find that money, they look professional. They are professional. They're educated. They have a network. And that's the best use of, usually the best use of that money.
Hmm.
But that's what I would, that's how I would say that no money.
It's funny. I was reading. I'm sure anybody that's in real estate knows of Bigger Pockets. It's a podcast for real estate in the U.S. Um, and I was reading one of the books. It's how to raise funds for real estate. Forget the author. Can put it in the description. But one of the things, like half the book, is about how you should start a podcast and get your name out there
Hmm.
and just create some credibility. And creating a podcast is pretty much free, other than, I mean, you could really realistically use your phone and a selfie ring, which millennials now already, by default probably already
Yeah.
have. So it's interesting what, like, people create their own limitations, right? They say they can't get started, but in reality they can. It's just hard to connect the dots,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. And it's a great point. These are one of these technological abilities that you have as a Gen X, sorry, as a Gen Z, or as, in your 20s, that somebody in their 40s or 50s might not be able to start a podcast as quickly or as easily, might not be able to put the technology pieces together, might not be able to run an Instagram account or a Facebook account to attract attention, to attract investors as easily
mhm.
that somebody that's younger. So focusing on the abilities, the things that you can do, will always get you better results in life, and you'll be happier with it. You'll have more fun with it.
Right. And there's something to be said about just getting started, right? I mean, just taking action, and if you fail, just start again, right? So I think a lot of people are just afraid of making errors, of making mistakes, and
Yeah.
then they just never get started, and they stuck in a rut, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I'm coaching our members, I tell them, look, guys, there's no winning and losing. There's winning and lessons. And when you're
mm,
younger, you have a lot more time to make these lessons happen. It just, when you do something that doesn't work, that doesn't give you the ideal outcome, just don't do it again. So the more of these losing or failures, or as I call them, lessons that happen, the more experienced you are. And again, the more value you bring to the table when you're looking to raise money.
mm. And as someone in their 20s, you're and thinking of raising money. How can you create credibility? Like, because you're looking at investors, and they may be in their 40s or 50s, right? And so then, and you want obviously uh, um, do do them justice, and deliver what you want to do, but to attract those types of investors, somebody in their 20s,
Yeah,
there can be a bit of prejudice there.
absolutely. There is. There absolutely is. I felt it when I was starting. So the best way to create credibility is through results. You got to find a way to get that first deal done, to get those results. Because once you have those first results, now everything becomes easier. That becomes the launching pad, the framework, the backbone of your entire platform moving forward. And so getting those first results under your belt are extremely important. So a couple of ways that I've seen our members get those first results is, number one, you don't have money to buy a property and nobody's going to invest in you. Start a property management company. Start managing properties for investors that have the money. So what you're going to do, and cut your prices to half. You're not making money with this property management company. You're not making a dollar. What you're doing is you are gaining experience, you are gaining credibility, and probably most importantly, you are meeting and talking to all of the who's who in the real estate business in your market that you're in. You're going to be talking to landlords. You're going to have a reason to talk to landlords that own multiple properties. You're going to talk to property investors. You're going to talk to people that have money. And so by starting the property management company and starting to manage properties yourself, you get much closer to having that first deal get done, and you build a ton of credibility. This is
Hmm.
one of the things I did when I started. I started a property management company, and I wasn't looking to make money on it. I had the lowest prices ever, maybe 3 or 4% to manage the property. But I learned so much about tenants, about buying properties. Everyone that I managed properties for, I treated them as a mentor and as a coach. And I would always ask them when I had them on the phone, hey, so how did you get financing for that? Or how does it work when the bank wants, when your mortgage comes up for renewal? Whatever question I had a direct line to 10 or 15 investors at any time that would take my call because I'm their property manager. So
Hmm.
that would be number one. Right off the bat, the simplest way to start is start being a property manager. Number two is work for free. Find somebody that you want to partner with and tell them you'll work for free. Normally what happens in a deal, a joint venture partner, or an individual private equity deal, same thing, is that, Andres, if you had the money and I was going to do the work, you would put in the money, I would put in the work, and we would split the profits in some format, maybe 50-50, we'll say, just to keep it easy. Well, I might come to you and say, look, I understand that I don't have any track record. I've never done a property, but I've been running this property management company for 8 months and I know exactly what I'm doing. I joined this group. I've invested in myself. I'm educated. I have a coach. This is what our members say because they have a coach, they have a community, they have training, they have mastermind groups. Say, I know what I'm doing, but let me prove it to you. I'm going to do the first deal for free. How would you like it if I did the first deal for free? Normally I do 50-50. I'll do the first deal for free. And then the deal is, the agreement is, if I make you money, we do the second one at 50-50. That works 9 out of 10 times. But who doesn't want a deal done for free that has the money and doesn't want to do any work? Number one. And then number two, if somebody's made you money, why don't you want to do a deal with them again to make money? The first thing the investor says is, when can we do this again? So that would be the second way to do it. And 1 and 2 dovetail really nicely together. If you did the property management first, and you had that credibility of that company, and then you went to somebody to raise money, they'll either say yes or no. And if they say no, you say, I'm going to do it for free.
Sounds like a lot of free work, most of those. And I don't know if somebody just out of college would be able to do something like that.
Was the
But
only time you can do it. Andres, think of my boy band. I worked for free for months in order to get a record deal in Nashville. And only because I worked for free for months and months and months. So the only time you can really do that is in college. You can't be in your mid 30s or mid 40s with 2 or 3 kids and a full-time job and say, I'm going to do real estate investing on the side for free. The
Mhm.
only time you can do it is before that part of your life starts.
Hmm.
So it is the time. It is the time to do it. And why not work for free for a few months? I mean, if it's whatever you want it to be, it could be 1090, just give me 10% of the deal, or just give me a small little bit to pay for my lunches. It's
Mhm.
whatever you
Mhm.
want it to be. It doesn't have to be absolutely for free, but my recommendation is if you just do it for free and, but just have them, agree to, let's do the next one at 50-50 at my standard rate.
I guess my next question would be, is all of your investments within the US, or all the work that you do within the US, or have you ever had any experience outside the US? I'm
All,
currently outside the US.
yeah, all of my work and investment happens in the US and in Canada. So in North America. And
Oh,
it
yeah. Mhm.
coincides with our member base is all across the US and Canada. So we're seeing there's very different economics that happen throughout the two countries. For example, in Canada, 80% of the population lives in 6 different cities.
Mhm.
So it's much easier to pick a city that's going to have population growth in Canada. In the US, 80% of the population lives rurally in smaller towns or smaller cities scattered across the US. So you really have to be a lot more careful about population migration. Population migration can either make or break you in the US, where in Canada, it's less of an issue because we know where everybody's going to go
Mhm.
in those major cities. So there's a couple nuances and a couple differences when it comes, when I'm talking to investors, our members from the different countries.
Interesting. Yeah, most of the investors I've been talking to have all been from the US, but I've had quite a few Canadians on recently for for whatever reason. I've been and meeting in person a lot of
Yeah.
Canadians. I forgot that you were Canadian,
Yeah.
but but great, great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
huh? I was just gonna ask, have you ever thought of venturing somewhere else, or you want to
You know,
stay focused in the US and
I
Canada?
get that question a lot from our members. It's like, what, Michael, what do you think about this investment in Greece? And what do you think about this investment
Mhm.
in Costa Rica and da 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 da? I said, these are great, but why are you investing here? That's always the first question. Is it one of two things? Is this a financial investment or a lifestyle investment? Because I'll answer the question differently. If it's a financial investment, did I just have balloons come on my screen? Did
Yes.
you see that?
Don't know why.
It's,
Interesting.
Apple just released this new update where if you do hand signals, I bet I could do it again. There we go. Anyway, I'll continue. I get a little distracted. I like to have fun, Andres. Okay. So the last one, I'll say depends. If it's a lifestyle investment, go for it. If that's what you want, live wherever the hell you want in the world, as long as you have your finances in order. But if it's a financial investment, for me, it's got to be a really, really good investment to be international. Like the returns have to be so amazing that it's worth all of the risk and complexity that I
Mhm.
don't get investing domestically. Or another way I'll ask them, I'll say, why do you want to invest in Europe? Have all the investments in the USA gone dry? Is there nothing left in the US? Or is there nothing left in Canada? They'll say, well, no, there's a lot of good ones here. So invest here. Don't make your life
Mhm.
more complicated than it has to be. You just make your life more complicated. Maybe if you're going to get 500-600% return in investing in a different country, great. But if you're going to get the same returns, invest domestically to reduce the complexity
Mhm.
through taxes and through, intercompany bureaucracy and all of the things that you would go through.
Yeah, I used to. I mean, I'm just adventurous in by nature, and I'm been living outside the U.S. for the past six months or so. But while I'm been working on podcasts and other things, and I was living in Medellin, Colombia, and I sort of regret not buying something a couple years ago because now there's all these digital nomads, so I guess such as myself,
Yeah.
that came in and housing prices went up by like 20%. But you coulda, shoulda, woulda. But but yeah, just in general, I feel like some of these frontier markets can have that if especially, I mean, just for that example, if you're tracking where the next digital nomad boom is gonna be, so it's just something of interest of
Yeah.
me. But
Yeah. Yeah.
living in Colombia, I realized maybe I should just focus on the US because, um, just leveraging the dollar. I live in Colombia, the exchange rate's insane, so you can be making, you can double your yearly income if you want, if you wanna say it that way, just by living in a different country. Um, so it's just different perspective, and nowadays with technology, it's easy to be anywhere. Um, so
Yeah.
speaking
Yeah.
to your Costa Rican investor there,
Yeah.
he can live there and just invest in, the US, but yeah, so.
Yeah. There's a couple things there that are absolutely true. So number one, you're in Colombia and you want to buy a place and absolutely you're there, right? So you're not
Mhm,
increasing complexity in your life because you're already there. So it doesn't create more complexity to own 4 or 5 places close by because you're already
mhm,
dealing with exchange rates. You're already dealing with banking and governments and all of those things. It's not net new. But you want to be in Colombia and then go invest in France. It's like, well, why would I go do something? Sure, there may be a great opportunity. Um, but now you're layering on that complexity. So in my opinion, and this is an opinion, for my life, in my opinion, I don't want more complexity. I want simplicity.
mhm,
And if I can earn the same amount of money in a simpler format, I will take that every single time. The second thing you said around, buying yesterday, woulda, coulda, shoulda, it's the age old prophecy in real estate. It's, the best time to buy real estate was yesterday. The second best time is today. Every day that people wait to invest in real estate, they regret it more and more and more. And it's not like I said this to a member the other day. She was upset because she hadn't started investing 5 years ago. She felt 5 years behind. And I said, you're not 5 years behind. You're 5 years ahead of yourself 5 years from now. So put yourself in your shoes 5 years from now and say, oh, I'm 5 years behind. And then let's take a time machine and you're here today. What would you do differently? And she's like, holy shit, I got to invest in real estate today or else I'm going to be 5 years behind. So for you or for anyone listening, you're never behind. You're always ahead. It's just where you shift your perspective.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, when you said that most, you, correct me if I'm wrong, you said most of your clients are coming in are sort of in the 40 to 50 range, right? So just the fact that, you know, me or anybody else listening in their 20s is thinking about doing it is already a step way ahead of the curve, right? I mean, and you'll have another decade or two to to sort of learn, make errors, and all these type of stuff. And I think it's very pervasive nowadays. Everybody feels like they're behind in somewhere, shape or form, right? It's
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was just in my generation, or not, but or what is the generation after millennials, Gen Z. So
Everybody
yeah.
feels behind, Andres. You're right. Everybody feels like they're behind. Everyone feels like they don't have enough time. Um, but we do have enough time. And my coach wrote a book. My coach, Dan Sullivan, wrote a book called The 25-Year Framework. And he looked at his life in terms of 25-year chunks. And it's an absolutely amazing concept. If you look at your life in 25-year chunks, and you understand the fact that we're all going to live longer today than the actuary tables say, like the average lifespan is like what, 80 or 76. By the time that you are 80, do you know the amount of technology that's going to be there that's going to have you live to 110 or 120? That's going to, through blood cleansing and epigenomics and all the different things. So we have more time. Even me, I'm in my early 40s. By the time I'm 80, I'm going to be able to live to 110. So we
Mm,
have more time than we think. The problem isn't time anymore. It becomes money. We have to have enough money so we don't die before our money runs out. And that old model I talked about, the post-war model, was planning on people dying at like 70, 68, 67. So it was okay to put some money in the stock market and invest in your pension, or just rely on your company pension or whatever, because you're dead at 70. Today, if you run that model, you're not dead at 70, you're out of money at 70, because it's not designed to go with you into your hundreds. So we do have time. Everyone feels behind, but we do have more time than we think.
hmm. What's your I mean, and we can leave this as maybe the last question, but what's your opinion on 401ks? Because I've had a gut feeling for the past few years that it's just not worth it. I mean, your money's just sitting there, and just thinking back to when I read Random Walk Down Wall Street type of thing, that 10% average, I just don't see that continuing on in the next few decades. Um, and so at the end of the day, I mean, I guess you can use your 401k to invest, but I'd rather put that into courses or put that, especially I guess it depends how old you are at the moment, but
Mhm.
what is your take on that?
So this element has a couple different, this question has a couple different elements. One is tax planning, which I'm not an expert at, so I won't get into. So there's some tax planning pieces that are individual for everybody. But philosophically, when you come to a registered savings account, like a 401k or an IRA, they're fantastic in certain situations. So if your income is really high and you want to have your income tax be less, then putting some money into a registered savings account, 401k or even IRA, is great. It's fantastic because you pay less tax. The problem that most people have with, let's say, a 401k is it's not the 401k that's the problem. It's what you choose to invest it in that is the problem. If you choose to invest in the stock market, that is your problem, because the stock market is highly risky. And now I talk to financial advisors about this. You're like, what are you talking about, Michael? The stock market's not risky. It always produces 5% over a 10-year period. I said, yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not risky. Look at that 10-year period. All the stock market does is go up and down like this. So it's volatile. And Andres, for me, volatility is another word for risk, because if I'm going to retire on the day right after it drops, that's risk, because at any moment it could go up or down by 20%, where something like real estate is much less risky, much less volatile than the stock market. So going back to our 401k, if you take your 401k and you invest it in the stock market, well, if you like to earn low returns with the higher amount of risk, then that's what you should be doing. But you could take your 401k, self-direct it. It's certainly self-directed an IRA, and put that into an eligible real estate investment. So now you're earning bigger returns, tax deferred, with the muted risk that the real estate allows. And there's two reasons I think why real estate is less risky. Number one, is because people will listen and be like, well, Michael, that's not right. Real estate is way more risky. They'll cite 2 or 3 times in history where real estate crashed, like 2008, which it crashed because of the financial markets, not because of the value of brick and mortar, right? The real estate didn't crash. The financial markets crashed and took
Hmm.
this mortgage-backed securities down with it. So that's a great example of how volatile the stock market is. In the late '90s, that was the tech bubble. That was stock market. In the late '80s, the interest rates went up, and then the real estate took a dip for sure. But with real estate, number one, you're in control. I talked about control earlier on. In real estate, you're in control of the decisions to direct your future. What type of tenants you put in there, what type of renovations you do, how long you hold the property. If you want to buy and flip to yourself, or buy and hold. You have all those decisions that can improve or increase the value of the property. On the stock market, you get zero decisions on increasing the value of your investment. You can't walk into the local IBM, you can't walk into the IBM headquarters and say, guys, here, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do something different here, we're gonna da da da, and we're gonna make more money. You have no control over your stock market portfolio. So to me, that's why real estate is less risky. That's number one. Number two, real estate is less risky because the velocity of transactions is exponentially lower than the velocity of transactions in the stock market. In the stock market, you can do a transaction on a stock can happen 1,000 times a second or something. Like with that's a made up stat, but it can happen so fast, probably 1,000 times a second. When you look at computers now doing transactions, and 1,000 people around the world can buy or sell a stock with the click of a button, because the transactional friction is so low, the volatility is up and down. It's an emotionally based investment. It has very little to do with the value. It has to do with the emotion, the sentiment, what the president tweets that day, what Elon Musk tweets that day. These are driving the value of your future. It's
Hmm.
insane to think about that the people are still doing this. Whereas real estate, the transactional friction is so painstakingly horrible, or so high. The transaction is so hard to do. If you ever bought a piece of real estate, getting qualified for the mortgage takes weeks, getting the attorneys involved, the title agent, like the whole deal takes a long time, which kind of seems like it sucks as a real estate investor, but that is what is amazing as a real estate investor. Because that transactional friction is so high, transactions don't happen 1,000 times a second. A house might be bought and sold twice, maybe 3 times a year, not 3 times a second. So that allows emotion to take the sideline. Emotion is in the back seat, and logic and numbers come forward more than in the stock market. And so you'll see that on any real estate graph, the stock market will move like this, and in the same amount of time, the real estate market will move up and down slowly. Tick, 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 tick. I'm using my hands for anyone listening and not watching, but you can just picture a stock market graph with these high swings going up and down. The real estate graph has a much smaller swing up and down. They both increase about the same amount, 5% a year if you take any 8 or 10-year period. But in between, the journey, the ride is like a nice smooth hill going up or a volatile roller coaster going out. So if they both increase about the same amount, take the smooth hill, take the easier ride up every single time.
Wow, I love it, and I haven't heard it in that perspective. Um, hmm. Transaction. So basically, the transaction rate affects the volatility, and I'm sure there's um, some economics or some math that could describe that process, but
Yeah.
a little bit better. And the thing that came to mind a little bit was if you think about like the the trading bots that you were talking about, the like somebody at Blackstone has some PhD using some machine learning algorithm. How are you supposed to compete with that? Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, why try and compete? Um,
Yeah. It's
in the
ridiculous.
yeah, in the age of
We could
AI.
never compete. Even if you were the smartest trading person, you don't have the tens of millions of dollars that these firms have. Like there's
Hmm.
just no way to compete it's a losing game. There's really no way to make money. They're making the money, but they're not looking at that single family home down the street from you that you could buy, put in an income suite, rent it out to tenants at great value and make $400 a month cash flow, plus have that increase in value of tens of thousands every single year. They're not looking at that. Their algorithms aren't finding that, but
Hmm.
you can find that as a real estate investor and be in full control.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for jumping on with me, chatting. Hopefully we could do this again. I'd love to pick your brain some more.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah. I know we had a
yeah,
bit of a quick one today. I know your listeners usually get a little bit more, but we thought we'd hop on for just a quick one today.
no worries. All right. Thanks.
Andres, thank you. Thank you. Have an excellent time there in Colombia. It looks beautiful there.
And actually, before we jump off, if you want to
Yeah.
share how people can look you up or find some of your info, your courses.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, if anyone is interested, if you like what I'm saying and this you kind of resonate, we have a couple ways to get into our organization. The first one is a free masterclass that we do for anyone who's curious. It's a 60-minute masterclass done by my co-founder here, Scott, and my business partner at Keyspire. And we just basically walk through the 4 ways to win. We build a 10-year plan for you, and we just help you get the basics in real estate investing. The other thing that we do is a 3-day virtual boot camp. We run it about every month or so, and you can attend anywhere in the world to our virtual boot camp. That one's a couple $100, and it's a 3-day commitment. It's like 11 to 4 for 3 days Eastern time. But that one is for those of you that are a little bit more serious. You want to skip the free 1 hour, and you just want to learn exactly how this is done. And in that boot camp, we're going to walk you through exactly how it's done. You get a free one-on-one call with one of our strategists and a whole bunch of other free resources. And Andres, the best part is it's 100% money back guarantee. Anybody who doesn't have a great experience, we give you all your money back. So those are the 2 ways that suggest people get to us. It's keyspire.com/masterclass or keyspire.com/bootcamp. Those are the 2 ways that we help.
Awesome. Thanks
Yeah,
again.
thanks. Thanks. All right, Andres, have a great day.